If it's got moving parts, chances are you ought to oil it. Power hammers are a perfect example of that. You should probably oil your power hammer every single day you use it, maybe twice a day if you're using it very heavily. Some points take oil, some points take grease. Whatever it needs, if it's got grease zerks, put grease in it. I would clean the zerk off before you put grease on it. If it's just got a hole for oil, put oil in it. But a power hammer is not the only thing that needs to be oiled in the shop. Or the mechanical power hammer, I should say, is not the only thing that needs to be oiled in the shop. The guides on the newer pneumatic style hammers should be oiled. And the air system needs to be oiled, the valves, but mostly the cylinder itself. For that, most hammers will have some kind of an inline oiler so you get oil into the air system. Check that every time you use it. If you're using it heavy, check it several times a day. Make sure you don't run it out of oil because your hammer's not going to be happy with you if you run that oiler dry. Some self-contained air hammers will have a different system, so follow the manufacturer's recommendations. The fly press needs oil. It has guides that require a little bit of oil, and the threads should be oiled. This is a 4-lead screw, so make sure you get oil in all 4 of the screw leads. Even the pivot points on your treadle hammer, where the treadle pivots and where the springs pivot, should be oiled. This style of hammer with the rollers, this doesn't need oil because the rollers take care of that and they're sealed. But again, follow the recommendations from the plans you followed to build it, or from the person you bought it from, or from the manufacturer if it's manufactured equipment. A lot of new equipment doesn't need oil because it does have sealed bearings. Even the hydraulic press needs oils along the ram guides to make sure it runs smooth and you don't wear it out any faster than you have to. How many of you put oil on your post vise? I'll bet not many of you, but you should. Just a little bit of oil on that screw every now and then. And I even put a little oil out here where this bearing cap runs, and that just keeps the whole thing running a little bit smoother and means it'll also probably tighten down a little bit. It doesn't take long to take care of this stuff. Even this machinist vise has a little spot on it that says oil. They give you a hint. It's not a bad idea to get some oil on the threads from time to time as well. That's mostly oil for this right here at the opening of the screw. And you can see how smooth that runs, and that's probably an 80-year-old vise. People have been oiling it. The quill on your drill press should probably have some oil on it from time to time. Again, follow the manufacturer's recommendations if you still have an owner's manual. The old Marvel bandsaw's got to have grease in some places and oil in other places. If you've got an old piece of equipment, look for these little oil cups. Sometimes they blend in and they're kind of hard to see. Even this belt grinder has grease zerks for the bearings, so it needs grease. Even my old Buffalo Forge blower has a little place to oil the bearings, little sealed caps, and it needs oil every now and then. So that's just a little tip to help keep some of your equipment in better condition. Now, how often and what kind of oil should you use? That's sort of up to the equipment. For the power hammers, on the guides and on the Little Giant, just about everywhere I oil it, I use chainsaw bar oil. That's kind of formulated to stick under the chain in the bar so it doesn't fling off into the air so fast. And I think that's good for the power hammer, that it's a little stickier. Although in the winter you might want something a little thinner because sometimes that old oil doesn't flow very well and doesn't provide much lubrication when it's cold. For just about everything else, I just use a lightweight motor oil. If you've got an owner's manual, use what the manufacturer recommends. That's always the best plan. The sealed bearings, you don't need to do it. But all this old stuff, it lives on oil. Francis Whitaker used to say, oil is cheaper than iron. And that's not talking about the iron you're forging, it's talking about the iron your machines are made out of. If you wear out a power hammer because you didn't oil it, it's going to cost a lot to fix it or replace it. So if you spend a few bucks on some oil, your equipment's going to last longer. So how often? Power hammers every day. Pneumatic hammer, oil in the oiler continuously, never let it run dry. Everything else once a week, some of it probably only once a month. Depends on how much you're in the shop. If you're in the shop 10 or 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, at least once a week for a lot of this stuff like vice screws. If you're in the shop for 1 or 2 days a week for 4 hours on the weekends, maybe once a month you should oil everything. But it's a good habit to get into and do it as a routine and not a, oh gee, I haven't oiled that in a while, I guess I'll go oil it. You should just always do it at about the same day of the month or the same day of the week and just make that maintenance day. It's also a good time to check for loose fasteners. Is your vise bolted down well? Are the bolts and the toggle arms on your power hammer still tight? Because those things do tend to work loose and come off, so you might as well check them every now and then. But anyways, that's just a tip to help keep your stuff running. I hope you liked it. We'll get back to some forging videos here pretty quick, and we'll see you later.